Hello, I'm Arvistev. Today I'm going to talk about Anglo Norman period. Anglo Norman literature is a literature composed in the Anglo Norman language developed during the period of 1066 to 1 to 1204 when the Duchess of Normandy and England were united in Anglo Norman realm. The content which we're gonna here discuss is like this. First, the introduction of Anglo-Norman period, narrative literature, epic, and in the narrative literature, we're gonna talk about epic and romance, and the second one is fable, and religious tale. So this is the part of narrative literature, and the second part of the content is history of Norman period, Anglo-Norman period, and the third is didactic literature, and the fourth one is hagiography, and the fifth one is lyric poetry, and the sixth one is satire. And we will also discuss a lot about the satire and what kind of satire was there in Anglo-Saxon Norman, and the writer who wrote the satire in that period, what were their names. So all would be included in the program. And the seventh one is drama. So, what was theory in the drama? What kind of reflection they could produce in drama? So, this would be the part of our, lecture. So, first we will take introduction. The Norman language came over to England with William Conqueror. Following the Norman conquest, the Norman language became the language of England's nobility. During the whole of the 12th century, the Norman language, the variety of Norman used in the England share, with later the distinction of being the literary language of England, and it was in use at the uh, uh, you know uh, court until the 14th century, and it was until the reign of Henry IV that England became the native tongue of the English, uh, and the King of England, and the language had undergone certain changes which distinguished it from the Old Norman spoken in Normandy, and can be seen from the graphical characteristic from which certain rules of pronunciation are to be inferred. An Anglo-Norman variety of French continued to exist into the early 15th century, though it was in decline at least from the 1360, when it was deemed insufficiently well known to be used. Populating in court, great prestige continued to be enjoyed by the French language. However, in the late 14th century, the author of the Manuary de language calls French. Although the diffusion of the epic poetry in England didn't actually inspire any new Johnson's de Gustus, it developed the taste for this class of literature and the epic styles in which the tale of Romain of Horn, of Bowen de Hampton, of Guy de Warwick, of the Valley, and of Pelic Paris Verani are traded, and is certainly partly due to these circumstances. Although the last of these work has come down to us only in a prose version, and it contains unmistakable sign of a previous poetic form, and what we possess is really only a rendering into the prose similar to the transformation undergone by many of the Johnson's de Gust. The inter-influence of French English literature can be studied in the pattern romances in Romance de adventure. Even better than in the epic poetry of the period. The lay of Orpheus is known to us only through an English imitation, Sir or Foo. The Lia de Cour was composed by the Robert Beckett in Anglo Norman period of the 12th century. Wolf Land Erin Eri Air. The leaves of the Mary de France were rare in England, and the greater number of the romances composing the Mary de Bretagne seems to have passed from England to French through the medium of Anglo Norman. The legend of the Merlin, an author collected in the Historia Regum Britannica by George of the Monmouth, died 1154, passed into the French literature bearing the character which the Bishop of the St. Asaph has stamped upon them, and Justin de Toise. So, Percival, sorry, 1175 is doubtless based on the Anglo-Norman period. Robert de Baron, 1215, took the subject of his Merlin, published by G. Barris and G. Ulrich, 1886, two-volume Society de Ancient Texts Praxius from the Geoffrey Bournemouth. That was also a big name like the Geoffrey Chaucer. Finally, the most celebrated love legend of the Middle Ages and one of the most beautiful inventions of the world literature, the story of Tristan and Isolde, tempted two author Berols and Thomas, the first of whom probably and second certainly Anglo-Norman. One for Lee Tristan was composed in England in last year of 12th century. Less fascinating than the story of the Tristan and Isolde, but nevertheless of the considerable interest, are the two romance de adventure of Hog of Rutland, Empo Maidon, published by the Eugene Colbing and Koich Witched and Breslau 1889, and Prothesalus, published by the Qualaco Göttingen 1924, written about 1185, and the first relates the adventure of the knight who married the young Duchess of the Salaberry, niece of King Malinger of Salasy, but was loved by the Mary, the king of fire. The most beautiful and gracious language, and the most noble speech in the world after school later, but prized and loved by all people over any other. Per God made it so sweet, lovable, manly for his own honor and praise. It can be thus be compared to, it can thus be compared to the angels' speech in heaven for its great sweetness and beauty. Somewhat ironically, the text contained many pages that distinguished Insular from continental French. The most flourishing period of Anglo-Norman literature was from the beginning of the 12th century to the end of the first quarter of 13th. The end of this period is generally said to coincide with the loss of French provinces to Philip Augustus, but literary and politically history don't correspond quite so precisely, and the end of the first period would be more accurately denoted by the appearance of the history of William the Marshal in 1225, published for Société d'I. History de France by Paul Maya, 3 volume, 880, 891 to 901. It owes its brilliance largely to the protection accorded by Henry II of England to the man of letters of his day. He could speak French and Latin well, and is said to have known something of every tongue between the Bay of Biscay and the Jordan. He was probably the most highly educated sovereign of his day, and amid all his busy, active life, he never lost his interest in literature and intellectual discussion, and his hands were never empty, that they always had either a bow or a book vase. And Boyd de Saint-Moore compiled their histories at his bidding, and it was in his reign that Mary de French composed her poem, an event which he was closely connected with. The motto of Tom's bracket gave rise to a whole series of writing, some of which were purely Anglo-Norman, and in his time appeared the work of Beowulf and Thomas Brayton respectively, as well as some of the most celebrated of Anglo-Norman Roman the Avenger. It is important to keep this fact in mind when studying the different work which Anglo-Norman literature has left us. We will examine these works briefly, grouping them into the narrative, didactic, hagiographic, lyric, and satiric, and dramatic literature. Narrative literature. And in the narrative literature, we're going to discuss epic and romance. The French epic came over to England at an early date. It is believed that the Johnson de Song of Roland was sung at the Battle of Hastings, and some Anglo-Norman manuscripts of Johnson's de Gasty have survived to this day. The Pelerinage de Charlie Magani. It is a very tough because it is very tough to pronounce because these are the Latin words and French word. Edward Kochwitz, Al Pranzo Sissi, Bibliotatics, for instance, is only preserved in an Anglo-Norman manuscript of the British Museum, but it has been lost now. It is not there. Although the author was certainly a Persian, and the oldest manuscript of the Johnson D. Roulette that we possess is also a manuscript written in England. And amongst the other of less importance, we may mention Le Chancon D. William, the MS of which has June 2003 has been published in Pessimile at the Chesapeake.